Hello, everyone. We're going to wait another minute or two so that people can get in through the webinar, and then we will start a session. Hello, everyone. My name is Henry Sang, and I wish to welcome you to today's talk from Let's Talk Education of the Cupertino Chamber of Commerce. Let's see, I don't know that the slides are up. Could we try to get the slides back up, Rick? This is a series that we've been doing for the last 5 years, and Dr. Andy Nguyen, who's talking today, has actually been in each of those 5 years. I, by the way, am with the Cupertino Library Foundation, as you can see from the banner ahead, and I've been a chair for the last 3 years. Let me go to the next slide, please, on just some housekeeping things. This webinar is, okay, I need to go to the next slide. The webinar is being held with the Zoom webinar tool. And if you want to ask questions, and we encourage you to ask questions, there's a Q&A button you have to click at the bottom of your screen. You might have to use your mouse to cursor on down and see the Q&A. And if you have any problems or you have other things you'd like to bring up or share about yourself, please use the chat button and we can take a look at that. The talk today will go all the way through Dr. Nguyen's materials, and then at the end we're going to have an open Q&A. Now this meeting will be recorded, and so you can watch it again. And Andy has said that he's going to actually go pretty fast, so we expect that you may want to watch this a second time. At the end, we will also allow you to raise your hand and voice a question. Andy said he would stay around for as long as necessary to try to handle all the questions you may have. Can we go to the next slide, please? So to tell you a little bit about Dr. Nguyen, it's, you know, he's kind of like the textbook thing for us. He was the son of an immigrant family. He grew up in Cupertino. He went to our very own Lynbrook High School. He became a doctor, and in fact, he at one point, or maybe still is, the head of the Pediatrics department at Kaiser Permanente in Oakland. He is a husband and a father of teens and 20-somethings. And he always gives a killer talk. And I only regret that we can't meet in person because he's such a warm person. Everybody loves just talking with Andy. You can just feel it in what's going on, that, you know, this is something he really cares about. So he is going to share with us his insights, both as someone who grew up in Cupertino, as a parent, and as a professional. With that, let me turn this over to Andy. Andy, do you want to put your slides up?
Good morning, everybody. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Great. I have the Q&A panel up, Henry, but I don't have the chat. And let me see if I could do both. Maybe I can do both just in case I need to see stuff. Actually, I don't have that feature. I think it goes away when I'm sharing my screen. Can everybody hear me okay?
I think you're doing great.
Okay, and the visuals are okay. Well, thank you, everyone. I really am excited to be here. And it's like Henry said, I grew up in your area and I'm a child of immigrants. I can't see who the participants are. Usually it's a mixture of mostly Chinese Americans, Korean Americans, and Indian Americans, a pretty nice reflection of the Cupertino area, also Caucasian Americans also. I wanted to share this slide just to let you know I am hugely grateful for the Chamber of Commerce and Henry and Rick and other people who have invited me to give this talk. I am incredibly grateful, and I'm a generally grateful guy, but I'm going to tell you why I'm extra grateful today. So 2 years ago, I started having electrical pain in my face. It was as though somebody was putting an electric cable on my face and electrocuting me. And it was horrible. And then a short time later, in the top right, they found a brain tumor, a benign brain tumor, non-cancerous brain tumor in my head. And I was dealing with that for a couple of years. And last January, I had brain surgery, and they drilled into my head and removed the tumor, and I'm much better now. This is a picture of my wonderful Kaiser Permanente surgeon and my wife. This is Dr. Alan Efren, who did a fabulous job helping me recover. And actually, just to let you know how much I value the opportunity to speak with you, I purposely scheduled another talk just a few weeks before my surgery. Henry helped me with that, and I got to do that in person. And one of my motivations was I didn't know what things were going to be like after surgery, and I wanted one more chance to be able to meet the people of Cupertino and to give back to the community that has blessed me so much. So I am really grateful to be here with you guys today. Let me tell you what this seminar is not about. This seminar is not about making our teenagers work harder, making teens get better grades and better ACT scores and AP scores, how to make teens get into the best colleges or even make them go to college. It's really not about making teenagers more driven, more high achievers, the next CEO, the next person who's going to be in the news and on the internet in a good way. And it's definitely not about how to make teens rich and powerful. So if that's what you want from this talk, you're probably going to get a little frustrated because I'm not talking about this. However, I will be talking about how to support our teenagers and help them be more well-rounded, happier, fulfilled, healthier teenagers. And that allows them to be successful in the worldly way. But I just want to let you know, this is not about how to crack the whip, how to push teenagers harder, and all of that kind of stuff. There's plenty of TED Talks and lectures about how to drive your teenagers harder. This is not that talk. So what is this seminar about? By the way, I'm going to be, some of the lessons that I'm teaching you, I need to learn myself. So some of the lessons I need to, so I'm going to talk about the dangers of perfectionism. And I can tell you, I was joking with Rick and Henry that even though I'm anti-perfectionism, I've spent probably about 20 to 30 hours this week revising my talk. So Henry and Rick, I think you're going to see some new things. So I'm just going to open with this story, and I'm going to read it quickly. And I wrote it all out. Usually, if this wasn't being recorded, I wouldn't have written it out. So the other night, Katie, who's my youngest, she's the one right here, and she's the one sitting in her mom's lap right there. She said, "Hey, Baba, I'm confused." This was the day before she was about to start high school. She's going to be a senior. And she said, "How come you don't pressure me to do my homework?" And I said, "What homework? School hasn't even started until tomorrow." And then she said, "Well, that's not what I mean. How come you don't pressure me about homework, about school?" And I said, as her father, I said, "Now I'm the one that's confused. You want me to boss you around? You want me to yell at you? Well, that's what my friends' parents do. Katie, you are not a baby. You're a young adult, and if you want me to treat you like a baby, I can do that, but you're not going to like it." Katie says, "I don't get it. None of my friends' parents do it the way you do it." And then Emily, who's our college student, I said, was nearby, and I said, "Hey, Emily, Katie wants me to tell her what to do. What do you think?" And then older sister, Emily, says to her younger sister, Katie, don't be stupid. Don't be stupid. Do you really want Baba to push you around? Do you want him breathing down your neck? Don't be stupid. It's better that he treats you like an adult. And Emily is 20, so she's just a couple of years older than Katie. And then Katie says, my friends get treated totally differently at home. I go, Katie, are you trying to figure out what I expect from you? She goes, yeah, I want to know. And remember, this is the day before she's starting her senior year. So she's a little stressed out about senior year and all the things that go with it. And I said, Katie, I feel like I've said this to all four of you, but it's a good warm up for the parenting talk I'm doing in a few days. I expect the same things I told Eric and Sam and Emily. I expect you to try your best. If you try your best, you have nothing to be ashamed about. Just try your best. I expect you to grow into the potential that God has given you, that you were given as a gift. You're pretty smart, right? That means your potential should be mostly A's. But if your potential was B's and C's and D's and you tried your best, I would be totally fine with that. You're not allowed to be a bum or a slouch. Now, I'm giving direction because she basically said, I want some directions, right? I said, it's not okay to be mediocre because you're not mediocre. But the reality is, if school was not your thing, then that would be fine. But I know that you can do this. And if you're totally stressed out and you're going to do something crazy, like hurt yourself or commit suicide, I'm telling you out loud, explicitly, I'll put it in writing. I would rather that you were relaxed and mentally and emotionally healthy and even mediocre. Just don't do anything stupid on me, okay? I want you to be a good person who loves God and loves people, and I do want you to be happy. And she says, is that it? I go, pretty much. If you want, I can make it more stressful for you, but I don't think you really want that. And she goes, okay, well, what about money? Am I supposed to make a lot of money? I said, that's up to you, Katie. If you want nice stuff and you want to do nice things, don't expect me to pay for it. You're going to have to figure it out. You need to figure out how you're going to support yourself. But if you don't care about that stuff, you don't need to make a lot of money. Well, what if I want to do something that doesn't make any money? That's up to you too. If you want to go ballet school or art school, or if you don't want to go to college, I'm fair and I'll give you the same money for school that I put aside for Eric and Sam and Emily. I do it the way your grandmother Nine did it. She said, everything is fair. Boys, girls, age, whatever, birth order, everybody gets the same support and it's all fair. After that, it's up to you to figure out because I'm not supporting you for the rest of your life. Got it? Okay, is that it? Yeah, that's it. And then she said to me, is this like reverse psychology? Are you like playing mind games on me? And I said, I might be. That's sort of what parenting is about. It's sort of leading and coaching and trying to help your kids succeed. But the bottom line is I trust you and I'm giving you freedom to make choices. Freedom is nice, but it's a lot of responsibility. If you make bad choices, you're the one that needs to live with it, not me. Got it? She said, okay, yeah. And if you want me to yell at you, just let me know. I'm happy to do that. Not really. I don't really yell. And I love you. Okay? So that story covers a lot about what today's seminar is going to be about, with some practical tips and a to-do list and more direction about, just learning from my mistakes. I should probably pause and see if anybody has any quick questions so they know they're in the right seminar. Henry and Rick, I'll let you guys let me know. Okay, so today's main points, if you just had to look at this slide and you had to go, this will be on the video. Make sure that they know that you love them, show them you love them, tell them that you love them, overwhelm them with encouragement and love. Be a safe and loving place for them. Praise them for who they are and not what they do. Don't make them into trophies. Drop the pressure. For long-term success, love and support is better than fear. Invest in relationships and connection with them. Raise them to be healthy adults and figure out what you think a healthy and successful adult looks like, and don't make them into something that they're not meant to be. all of us are created differently, and not all of us are supposed to be a doctor like me. And the last thing, and I'll talk a little bit about this at the end of our seminar today, you need to know, we all need to know that we are special and we are loved. If we haven't figured out our own emotional and mental and well-being, then it's really hard to take care of them, because we end up taking our baggage, all the expectations that we have for ourselves, and we transfer them to a bunch of teenagers who are still developing, and our children. So we need to sort of take care of ourselves and make sure that we're not struggling with our own conflicted issues that we're basically transferring to them. Okay, so target audience. This talk is specifically for people, parents who come from Asia or come from a different country, but mostly about Asians, because we have our own Asian baggage, and the teenagers are growing up in the United States. We're also talking about teenagers that are reasonably quote unquote good kids, teenagers who are trying to figure it out. We are not talking about teenagers who have any significant mental illness. Depression, anxiety, bipolar disease, obsessive compulsive disorder, addiction, severe addiction issues. For people who have these kind of issues, this talk does, I mean, there's elements that you can take from this talk, but this talk is not for those situations. Those kids need a completely different kind of support and help. So if you have a family member or a loved one or a friend who's struggling with those kind of things, a lot of this stuff might not work for you. We're also not talking about underachieving teenagers. Underachieving teenagers need a different kind of guidance, and I can go over that in the Q&A at the end. Parenting with love does not mean that we're enabling teenagers to make the same bad choices over and over and over again. If a teen is making bad choices, then love might mean helping teens to learn about consequences and responsibilities. But that's not the thrust of today's talk. Mostly, we're talking about kids who are stressed out and trying to do the best they can. So let me talk a little bit more about who I am and why I was invited to speak. I am like your children, and you as immigrant parents are like my parents. This is my baby picture from a long time ago. These are my parents, Henry and Betty Wen. They immigrated from China, fleeing the civil wars and world wars and the takeover of the communists. And they eventually went to Taiwan, and they eventually went from Taiwan to America. I am a child of Chinese immigrants. I was made in America. I was born by accident, unplanned, in America. I went to Lynbrook High School, so I was a Lynbrook Vikings, right? I went to UC San Diego, where I studied biochemistry and cell biology. I then went to the UCLA School of Medicine, and then I did 3 years of pediatric training. That's an internship and residency up here at Children's Hospital Oakland. Now Children's Hospital Oakland is part of UCSF. And then I did, because I'm extra nerdy and extra driven and extra whatever, crazy maybe, I did 3 more years of something called a pediatric pulmonary postgraduate fellowship, where all I learned about was breathing and lungs, and I loved it. I'm now a pediatric pulmonologist for children and teenagers from all cultures, and I'm also a clinical professor at UCSF, and I get to be the chief of the Department of Pediatric subspecialty at Kaiser Permanente, Oakland. And that means GI and cardiology and oncology and endocrinology. I work with a terrific group of physicians and nurses and medical assistants and technicians and social workers, a whole big group of people who are really working hard to take care of really fragilely ill children, and that's a great privilege. I'm also a husband and father of 4 teenagers or young adults, and the biggest credential I have for you is I have made a ton of mistakes, and I'm still learning. So I'm hoping to pass on to you some of the mistakes and lessons that I've learned. My biggest influences are actually being Chinese American. Being a child of immigrants is huge in my personality and character. Growing up in America, Being a doctor, many times our profession sort of trains us in a certain way. Being the department chief has been a huge growth for me. And actually, a lot of the stuff that I'm going to be sharing with you are from leadership books, and not just parenting books, but actually leadership books. So some of the things that I'm talking to you about are things that can be transferred to the workplace. Marriage and parenthood, huge stressors, so huge opportunities for growth. And then I happen to be a Christian. I follow Jesus, and that's been a big influence for me too. So what does it take to succeed? Well, it depends on, your culture, but I think if we ask this question to people and you read leadership books, they talk about things like this. Well, to succeed, you have to have talent, you have to have skills, and you have to have drive. You have to have grit, that toughness that people talk about. You gotta have, there's all these talks about TED Talks and videos about grit. Hard work, being able to persevere, being resilient and able to bounce back from failure. You have to have a certain amount of confidence to charge ahead and to push through obstacles. Some people need inspiration, especially if you're in the creative world where you're creating new things, whether it's music or art or a new computer program or a new tech thing, inspiration. And let's face it, luck and opportunities has a lot to do with success, especially if you're here and you have family connections or business connections and you have a network of people who can move you forward and open doors. So there's lots of things that go into helping people succeed. Now, what makes immigrants different? Well, immigrants have whatever cultural and religious heritage that we bring from our old country. Success is defined differently in the old country, so we're trying to figure out what is success here and what's success in the old country. Many people who come from other countries have a history where they and their family have had to fight to survive, fight to get an education, fight to get into their professions. In many cultures and countries, you have to figure out if you're going to be able to be an engineer as a teenager, because if you don't make the tests and you don't get accepted into the program, you will never be an engineer, or you will never have a career in whatever it is that you're striving for. So there's this huge pressure to achieve and to be great, even as a teenager, in some of the countries that we come from or our families come from. And even getting to America for some people is a huge journey, a huge fight to get into America. And the other thing that makes some of us different is failure in the old country looks really bad and can be very bad because there might not be a safety net, that if you make mistakes, if you don't achieve what you need to do to get ahead, then you might be blocked for the rest of your life. And so that's a big driver for people from other countries. It's interesting that I think that many people who were raised in America, they go, wow, this seems so strange. And yet lately we've been celebrating the story of Alexander Hamilton. He's been this hugely successful play. I never got to see the play in real life, but I recently saw it online. It's on Disney is streaming it, and it's all about the immigrant story. It's all about Alexander Hamilton and all the things that drive him, made him a little bit obnoxious, but also very successful and a great influencer in the country. And unfortunately, he ended up dying early because some of his issues really made it hard for him to have healthy relationships. But Alexander Hamilton is an immigrant. He's on our, I think it's the $10 bill. I think it's the $10 bill. And because he was such a big influence, he was an immigrant. So immigrants, the classic stereotype, and again, I'm using generalizations for this talk, is that immigrants are hungry, they're driven, they're focused, and then the children of immigrants, people like me or our children, they sort of take it easy a little bit because they're away from that insecurity of being new and not having a lot. And then the grandchildren take it more easy, and then great-great-grandchildren, they're often assimilated and they're like, yeah, I don't need to work so hard. I'm going to take it easy. So there are these generational changes. But this talk today is about parents who came from other countries or are strongly tied to the old ways, and our children, teenagers who are being raised in America with a different set of values and different set of pressures. And then just to make things extra complicated, you guys in Cupertino are in one of the most high pressure places of the United States because of Silicon Valley, money, achievement oriented people, the Silicon Valley is so different than most of the country. So I understand that you guys and your kids are under a lot of pressure. So parenting for success, the power of love, acceptance, and encouragement. That was a lot of talk, but we're now going to get into more of the details. Before we do that, I wanted to talk about the biology and science of development. And I also want to say that this talk is not bashing tiger parenting. So here's a picture that I found years ago. This is a mom, and she's bossing her kid around, and the poor little girl is playing the violin and trying to do her best. And if we look in the mirror or take a snapshot, mom is the tiger. Mom is the tiger, and this poor little bunny rabbit of a girl is crying, and she's upset, and she's stressed out. And and there was a book a few years ago about tiger moms, and some people call them dragon fathers. And I'm not here to beat up on that. In fact, this picture of a young lady, do you have a tiger mom? This was a video series from NBC, and you can probably still find it. Everything goes on the internet, it doesn't go away. And they interviewed a bunch of adults who were raised by tiger moms, and they said, what did you think? And most of the people interviewed said, it was really stressful. It was hard for me. It was high pressure, but there were some good things that came out of it, because I did end up going to college, or I did go into business, or I did learn to take risks. And some of it was, I felt like one person said, my mom definitely was a driver and on me all the time, but it actually gave me the confidence to know that she believed in me. So I'm not here to say that tiger parenting is good or that it's bad. I think it's incomplete, and it doesn't work for everybody. So main points we already talked about, and I'll skip over this. Raising teenagers. Here's some quotes. I already gave you my story. Here's another story. Raising teenagers can be hard. The children these days, they love luxury. They have bad manners. They have a contempt for authority. They show disrespect for their elders, and they love to talk and chatter in the places of exercise. They no longer rise in respect when the elders enter the room, and they contradict their parents. So I'm assuming that you guys have felt this way at times as parents. Not all of our kids are perfect all the time. And what's interesting is, this is a quote from Socrates, almost 2,500 years ago. And it just shows that this teenager behavior has been around for a long time, and it's probably wired into our development and our growth. And so the biology and science, I'm just going to go over really briefly, because this isn't a science talk, but really brain development is so complicated. And these pictures at the bottom, we can see how they develop from babies to toddlers to preschoolers to elementary school, and then middle school and young adulthood. And you can see how much change they're going through. Their bodies are changing, their height is changing, their face is changing. They grow a neck. Like babies, you can barely see their neck, but then when they're, in preschool, they go, oh, you actually have a body, a head, and a neck. And we sort of factor that in because we can see all the changes happening. But it turns out the brain's changing like crazy. There's hormones, their frontal lobe is developing. They're moving from playful, happy puppy type of behavior when they're little kids to thinking about things and contemplating things. And so it's really, there's a lot of stressful change going on in their lives. A child's brain likes to have safe boundaries. They like to know they want to play, they want to laugh, they're eager to learn, and they're willing to take clear directions, like don't run in the street, Don't play with fire. Say hello, say good morning, say thank you, say sorry. Okay, that's the kind of things that we say to little kids, and they say, okay, most of the time, okay, sure. And then teenager brains are going through this rapid change, lots of stress, hormones, social pressure, internet pressure, popularity, sex, drugs, alcohol, parental expectations, academic pressure, caught between American values and their families' immigrant values. They're caught in all these different ways, which is very stressful. And at the same time, it's normal for teenagers to start becoming like adults. They get smarter. And instead of being very concrete, black and white, they start to ask why. I want to know why. Why are we doing this? Why do we say that? And sometimes that can be exciting as parents to see, and sometimes it can be very frustrating because the teenagers might not be very polite when they ask why. They could be very obnoxious sometimes. Sometimes they go through a period where they feel invincible. I know what I'm doing. I know more than you. I can handle it. I can't fail. And we as adults are going, oh my goodness, this is such dangerous mindset. And the other thing is, remember, they're going through all of these things and they have cloudy judgment. And sometimes they behave irrationally. Sometimes they'll say one thing and then an hour later, they'll say something completely differently, or they'll forget what they said and they'll deny what they said. It's very adolescent, very, picture their brains changing as fast as their bodies. And it's easy to understand why teenagers make adults crazy sometimes. Teenagers want and need to become healthy adults. They want more choice. They want more independence. They want room to make mistakes. They don't want to be told what to do. And they might accept suggestions, but they don't want to be bossed around. And now I'm going to talk about successful executive function. Smita asked if there's going to be a video. I think this is being videotaped. Successful executive function. So what does that look like? Well, these are all the things that we like as adults. And it turns out that the science shows that we do better with executive, higher level frontal lobe thinking when we feel safe. So when we feel safe, we feel at peace and we feel calm and we feel content. And what that does is it allows us to be compassionate, to be collaborative, because we're not stressed. We can say, hey, how can I partner with you? How can I help you even though I'm not getting anything back from this? It's a bigger, less survival mode type of thinking. Healthier and deeper relationships come when you're feeling safe. Now, all these things, executive brain function, focused attention, observation, deferred gratification, problem solving, thinking about complex issues, memory that is a working memory and a long-lasting memory, short-term memory, all of these things work better. Goal management, creativity, innovation. There's a lot of things that work better when you feel safe and when you feel like you have room to do some of these things that take more mental energy. In contrast, if you feel in danger, all of this stuff goes away. Well, not all, that's not fair. A lot of it goes away. And what happens is when you feel in danger, you're not safe, and you go into survival mode. And you tend to turn down the higher executive function. Okay, you're in a stressful time, like a COVID pandemic. Things are stressful. A recession, that's stressful. Social unrest and social change, that's stressful. Fires and smoke. You guys in the South Bay have a ton of smoke compared to the rest of the Bay Area, and you're watching the mountains burn. That's stressful. So what does that do? It puts humans into a fight, flight, or freeze mode. Fight, flight, or freeze mode. Animals do the same thing when they're threatened by a predator. So fight is, I'm going to be ready to be defensive. I might give you glaring looks. I might be irritable. I might be cranky. I might be aggressive, angry. I might attack. I might go into rage. Flight mode is, I'm running away from that danger. I feel anxious. I feel fearful. I'm panicked. I need to escape and run away as fast as I can. I am worried, I'm concerned, I'm going to avoid. And then freeze mode is I'm frozen. I'm like literally the deer in the headlights. I'm numb. I feel ashamed. I feel hopeless. I feel trapped. I feel detached from my situation and my feelings. Now, this is a lot of what teenagers do. If you think about a cranky teenager, this is sort of what cranky teenagers look like, right? And what we need to do is we need to recognize that as parents. And then we also have to figure out what are we doing as parents that contribute to this stressful situation. Most adults have a hard time with excessive pressure. Many of you are in very high pressure work environments. Your mortgages and rent are really, really high. Job security is really shaky sometimes. So if adults have a hard time with excessive pressure, why is it that we think that our children and teenagers can handle it? We put our kids through a really high pressure situation, and we want what's best for them, but it puts them into a fight, flight, or freeze mode. So love, acceptance, I'm just trying to balance the conversation because there's plenty of pressure out there. I'm not saying that kids should not be under any pressure because there can be achievement that comes from that. But I think in many ways it can be very counterproductive. And that's where they start making bad decisions and getting cranky and just being frustrated. And, you know, one of the reasons I started giving this talk is because there have been a lot of issues with suicide and self-harm in the Bay Area. Henry shared with me that you guys did a survey, and I think it was something like 10 kids per high school in the Cupertino school district admitted to some sort of self-harm activity. 10 kids per high school, and those are the ones who admitted it. And
Andy?
Unfortunately, yeah, go ahead, Henry.
It's 50 per high school.
Oh my gosh, I thought it was 50 for the district. Oh.
No, it's 50 per high school per year.
Oh my goodness. So thank you so much for correcting me, Henry. I thought it was bad at 10 per high school. 50 per high school, we're talking about 250 kids admit, some of them aren't admitting it. So this is actually what drove me. There were a series of suicides in Palo Alto where some teenagers jumped on the train tracks. There have been other events, and every time I hear about these horrible tragedies, it makes me say, I need to get the word out. Pressure, we're contributing to this as a society, and we need to turn down the temperature. One size does not fit all. So let me pause for a second and see if anybody, we're going to have a Q&A at the end, and I'm happy to take a bunch of questions there. And then one of the things that's different is, I've never done this on Zoom actually, but we're wanting to be careful about not opening up the floor to questions, because sometimes people like to share their personal story, and that's going to go on the video. And so what Rick and Henry are going to do is they're going to turn off the recording at the end so that you can share whatever you want, and it won't be on the video for other people to hear and see.
Hey,
Okay.
Andy,
Go ahead.
One of the attendees wrote this. She said, I expect my kids to do their best in their schoolwork, whether it's homework, project work, quizzes, and tests. Mm-hmm. What if they don't care too much? They just want to get through their work, finish it, but not so much the quality of the work. Do you have any input on that?
Yeah, I think some of it is, we're going to talk about how kids are different. And I think one of the things that we need to recognize is not everyone is wired to be a certain way. So I happen to be a pediatric lung doctor, and I think I'm pretty good at it, but I would not be a good pediatric heart doctor, or I might not be a good surgeon because I was created in a certain way. And one of the things that happens is that we sort of set this expectation that our kids are supposed to be a certain way. And many times we're putting our personalities and growth as a 40-year-old or a 50-year-old and laying that on them when they may not be ready. Like some of them might be late bloomers. And then the other thing is, not everybody is academically driven. Just like not everybody is great at sports or art or cooking or relationships. They're all a little different. And so let me, I'm hoping that some of the tips I'm going to give people can help. But I can tell you that nagging and yelling at our kids does not generate long-term success. There's some downsides to that. The good news is this is a long journey. They don't have to figure it out right away. All of us are who we've been developing to be over decades, and some of them will surprise us. Some of the teenagers and kids that we thought, I don't think it's going to work out, they may end up being the most successful 30-year-olds, and vice versa. Some of the people who shine at 18, maybe they're going to take a different path, and that's their journey, right? But let me go through that. Let me see if I can open the chat and see if there's anything that I can see there. I don't think I can see the chat. Can you guys still see my slides? Because on my view, I became really big.
No, your slides went away. See if you can check your sharing.
Let me.
While you're doing that, Rick posted up. There's a website, bit.ly is bit.ly/CUP Chamber TV, and you can see all of the other videos, and that's where yours will be published. But in particular, one of the things you were just mentioning, it actually fits in really well with the last series of talks we did. We had a graduate panel about a month and a half ago. These are kids who went through our schools, but now they're in their mid-20s to mid-30s, so they're out in the work world. And they were taught, well, what worked and what didn't. And you're absolutely right. So many times what they look like at 18 is not what they look like at 30, right? The roads to success are not straight roads. The model we always want to have is this, like there's this simple box diagram success. Very seldom does that happen. You probably are actually more of a straight path than almost anybody, right?
Yeah.
But most people actually are very different.
Right. I think you're absolutely right.
I'll let you go ahead and continue on, and so we can see what other questions come in and get to those at the end, okay?
Okay, thanks, guys. So now I'm going to get into specific tips, and I hope this is helpful. I know it's a lot of information, but let's go ahead. So disclaimers, these recommendations are broad brush generalizations. They don't apply to everyone. Not every teenager goes through the same struggles. Some have a rough journey and some have a very smooth journey. So some of you might be saying, I don't know what teenagers he's talking about because my teen is not struggling with any of this. And some are saying, I know exactly what he's talking about because I see it every day. If these suggestions don't apply to you, maybe there are things that you can share with a friend whose family is struggling with some of these things. One of the things that, Henry, this is how much synchronized we are, knowing your goal and knowing that we're guiding them toward a long-term goal. And it might be a windy road before they reach whatever success looks like for them. What is success? Remember, you got to figure out what success is, because success at work and success at Silicon Valley and success in the United States and success in the homeland, the former homeland, in your family, in high school, in their hearts, how they define success, it might be very, very different. So when we say, I want you to be successful, they might be hearing something completely differently. And oh, here's a question. My kids often say that I'm judging them. That's exactly, we're going to talk about that specifically. So what do I want? What do you want for your children? This is something that everybody, as parents, many times we're not really clear what we want for our children and why. Financial success, money, academic success. I want my kid to go to the best colleges, the most prestigious colleges. Fame, for some people, now there's YouTube and Instagram and Snapchat, and I want to be an influencer. I want to be a celebrity. Do we want them to have good character? Do we want them to be happy? In some cultures, And even in America, like success was defined as marriage, because if you were not married, you were not thought to be successful. A healthy relationship with your faith or a higher being or God, it's different for everybody. And what's important is for you guys as parents is you need to figure out what you think is successful. As parents and leaders, you need to know what you care about, because your words and actions, your body language, your tone of voice, your emotions and actions, they tell your teenagers and kids what you care about. And these things will influence who and what they will become. If you say, hey, I'm a mellow parent, I'm just so supportive, but then they bring home a B or a C on the report card and they get yelled at, well, we're not that mellow, you know? Or, hey, I want you to be, you know, honest and open and always have great integrity. And they see us cheating on our taxes or cheating on how we interact with people to get ahead. Then they're going, you know, my dad says he believes in honesty and integrity, but I watch him and that's not really what he cares about. He cares about success, even if it means stabbing somebody in the back. Okay, so we have to be very careful about what we care about and how we're messaging that to our kids. What I want for my children, and I'm just sharing as an example, I'm not trying to put that on you, I'm just sharing that as an example. I want them to have a healthy faith. I want them to know and to love God. And Margaret and I have nurtured that, but ultimately that's their choice to make. It's not ours. I want them to have a healthy love, a love for all people, all cultures, all socioeconomic class. It doesn't matter if you're rich or poor or what color you are. And I want them to be able to love themselves in a healthy way, because many people in our society can be so critical that some of our kids struggle with loving themselves. I want them to be happy and have good hearts. And of course, I want them to be healthy and safe and secure. I don't want them to be in danger. I want them to be independent and successful. I don't plan to, you know, support them for the rest of their lives. And I don't think that's healthy. But, you know, these are some of my values. And then here's some other measurements of success that I had to work out for myself. And I continue to work out, because even though I say all of these things, like part of me is like, wait, that doesn't look very successful to me. You look like you're going in the wrong direction. So I have to do a mental check on myself. And actually giving this talk is sort of self-accounting type of thing. Do I really believe these things? These are aspirations. I'm hoping, I aspire that my kids will value love and have joy and have peace in their lives, being patient and kind to other people, to be good people and faithful people, and to have gentleness and self-control. Notice I'm not putting what school they go to, what income bracket they're in, what title they have on their resume. None of that compares to these things in my heart. But I also am not trying to make them so happy and goofy, because remember, I'm a child of immigrants, and I have spent thousands of hours on this talk. And even this week, I spent 30 hours after work trying to tune this up and refresh it for a Zoom meeting. So clearly I'm a self-driven perfectionistic guy, you know, but I'm hoping that my kids will have it better. You need to believe the things you say and care about, because if you're faking it, they see it. Our teenagers and the people who know us best, they see it when we're faking it. And teenagers hate hypocrisy. When they see hypocrisy, they're really revolted by that, and they won't listen. And it reduces our credibility as parents. Don't make them into something they are not. This is a big tip. Do not make them into something they're not. So, you know, the classic story is crystals and snowflakes. There's no snowflake that looks exactly alike. They're all very different. And guess what? Our children are different too. Everyone is special. This is just a picture just to highlight that. And this is simplistically only dividing it into 4 categories. Lions, who are fierce and decisive and leaders and intimidating. Beavers, who like to work hard. They're very task-oriented. They like to check the to-do boxes, and they like to clean up the rivers. They like to build things. Otters that are playful. They just sort of swim around, having a nice day in Monterey. And then golden retrievers, you throw them a ball and they're like, oh, that's fun. Let's play. I like to play. Hi, can you pat me on the head? You know, I'm very relational. I like to make you happy. And if you look at other personality tests, it's much more complicated than this. This is super simplistic, 4 categories, but it's just a highlight that we're all different. We're all special, and we all have strengths and weaknesses. And as we get older, hopefully we start to merge some of this stuff so that we can be better, well-rounded. But we are not all created the same way. And we as parents need to be careful, not be so judgmental and critical. Don't make them something that they are not meant to be. They may not know what they're like, but you know, some of them might be meant to be artists or scientists or builders or stay-at-home dads or stay-at-home moms or policemen and firemen and nurses and doctors, you know, all walks of life. And they're not all meant to be the same, just like we are not all meant to be the same. Now, I'm going to give you a scenario. Let's say your teenager is fantastic at computer coding and math and STEM, and that's their passion. It's not just that they're good at it, they love it. They would just spend all day, all week, all year doing it, and they'd be so happy. And then we said, hey, congratulations, I got you into this great school for you. You're going to be reading poetry, you're going to be doing watercolor, you're going to be doing ballet, and you're going to be learning to play, you know, electric guitar, all the things that that student really is not caring about. And oh, by the way, you're not going to take a math class for 4 years, but this kid loves math, loves science. Now, for us who are you know, from Silicon Valley, we would say, well, that's a huge mistake, right? Why would you take somebody with that passion and force them to go in a completely opposite direction? Well, it turns out that some of our teenagers and children are actually artists or poets or something else, and we are shoving them into STEM and saying, I expect you to be a doctor. I expect you to have a PhD. I expect you to get an MBA. I expect you to be a computer scientist, because that's what success looks like. And it turns out in their hearts, they don't feel that. And it's a bad combination for them. And they feel judged and criticized, and they feel very stressed. Fight, flight, or freeze. It's not a good fit for them. Beware of perfectionism. Perfectionism can be really high pressure. Some people, this is, you know, my nerdy science, the bell-shaped curve, which shows that if you take anything, height and personality types, there's a big spectrum. And some people are all in the middle, and some people are at the extremes, like the top 1 or 2% on this side and the top 1 or 2% on the other side. But it turns out that some people love pressure. They really do. And some people hate pressure. Most people don't like being uncomfortable. That's why the word is uncomfortable, right? We're not in our comfort zone. But some people thrive under pressure. They thrive in the challenge of being their best, reaching their potential, stretching beyond their imaginary limits. So these two guys are divers at the Olympics in 2016, and they won the gold medal. Well, guess what? They practiced the same dive over and over and over, thousands of hours of getting up there and jumping and doing the same thing over and over again to be perfect. This young lady is an American gymnast, and she practiced thousands and thousands and thousands of hours to win a gold medal for the United States. So perfectionism for some people is awesome, striving to go beyond their limits. They love that. And then some people, you put too much pressure on them and they are fight, flight, or freeze. They cannot function in this area. And guess what? Silicon Valley is one of the most high pressure work environments and school environments in the entire country. Our kids are under a lot of pressure. This is no surprise to you guys, because you guys as parents are under a lot of pressure. Some people love pressure, some people hate pressure. Some people are these tigers and lions, and some people are golden retrievers and otters. Here's another metaphor. So I was thinking that when people used to make swords, you know, weapons, It was steel and iron, and they would put it into the fire and heat up the metal and then pound that sword as hard as they could. But if you pound it too hard, you will break the sword. But if you do it just right, you actually get a sword that is very sharp and very powerful and unbreakable, almost unbreakable. So finding that right balance is really important. And for those of us who are Asian American, this was a movie that won Academy Awards 20 years ago, Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon. It turns out it's about a sword, and a powerful sword that warriors are fighting to get, because if they have that sword, it will make them super powerful, make them invincible. Well, it turns out there's a lot of character story in there. One character chooses to reject the temptation of the sword and ultimately sacrifices himself for others. The other character wants the sword so badly that she brings harm to other people. And ultimately, when she sees her mistakes, she commits suicide. So pressure can build people up to be greater than they are, or it can break people. And we need to be very careful that we are not over-pressuring our children. Beware of what you wish for, because you might not like what you get. The dangers of perfectionism, here's some, again, these are stereotypes and generalities. I will be afraid of my parents. Perfectionism, high pressure. What if my parents get mad at me because I'm not perfect? What about fear of failure? I'm not going to try because I hate failure. So I'm not going to do anything that's out of my comfort zone that involves risk, because I might not get an A+ in that class. And I'm only going to do things where I'm always the top of the class. I'm not going to try because I'm afraid to fail. I must win at all costs. Does the end justify the means? Am I going to succeed at any cost? Does that mean cheating, breaking the law, stabbing people in the back, stealing credit from other students? Many of us have work environments where people steal credit or deliver blame so that they get ahead and other people fall behind. Okay? And then even as we're teaching people, our children, to be obedient, there is the glass ceiling that many of you guys deal with. Obedience can make parenting easier because there's no pushback, but fear and too much obedience makes great followers, but sometimes keeps people from becoming leaders and innovators and independent thinkers. And that's what we hear about in some businesses, that Asians are great workers, but they can't be the CEO. They are not the innovators. Perfectionism is not reality. Nobody is perfect. People are all different. Not everyone is in the top 5%, right? Not everybody can be in the top 5%. And sometimes pressure gives us greatness, or sometimes it breaks people. If you look at this chart, perfectionism, high pressure, success at all costs, fear of failure, I'm failing expectations, I don't know how to face the future. That makes people desperate. They start doing high-risk behavior. Like Henry said, 50 students per high school in Cupertino admitted to self-harm behavior. And unfortunately, a few of those kids succeed, and we hear about the suicides. Horrible, horrible tragedy. So the benefits of praise and love. Confidence. I know my parents love me even if I'm not perfect. That gives a student, a young person, a huge amount of confidence. Resilience. Even if I make mistakes, I know I can try again. I'm not afraid to make mistakes. Creativity. I'm not afraid to try. If I goof up, that's okay. I'm starting over. I can fix it. I can try something else. Self-esteem. Guess what? I am more than my GPA. I'm more than that acceptance letter to Harvard or San Jose State or wherever I got into. I am who I am inside, not based on my outward achievement. Ethics. I will not cheat to win. I will not hurt other people. I will not break down my personal values just to get ahead. Make sure that they know you love them. This is important. Make sure they know you love them. I know you love them. You wouldn't be sitting around on Saturday morning if you didn't love them. But some teens don't feel loved. And that's because sometimes our words and actions send the wrong message. Sometimes our voice and words and body language can be hurtful or confusing. And remember, they're not fully mature and they're under a lot of stress. So even if you're doing everything right, they don't think straight all the times, and they may be processing things irrationally. Parents, we say, this is how I show you that I love you. I work hard to make money for you. I sacrifice my own happiness for you. I drive to work. Before the pandemic, I used to drive an hour and a half or 3 hours to work for you. I want you to have more opportunities than I do, and I'm pushing you to succeed so that you will be happy. Well, teenagers say, this is how I feel. You're never at home. You don't spend enough time with me. When you're with me, you're not talking with me. You're talking at me. You only tell me when I'm not good enough. You don't talk to me about how I do a good job. You're always criticizing me. You're always judging me. You don't care about me. You just care about my grades and my SAT scores and where I got into college and did I win this or that award. You don't really love me. You just love my accomplishments. It's like I'm a trophy to you. Well, I'm not saying this is what you're doing. I'm just saying teenager brain, sometimes they process things in a way that doesn't make sense. And sometimes they're actually right. So what happens when we only praise them or yell at them about grades and achievements? They start to ask, do my parents really love me for who I am or what I do? And if I succeed, will my parents love me more? If I fail, will my parents love me less? We don't know. They also don't understand they don't actually remember how much we played with them when they were little. They don't know how much we wanted to have children. And by the way, many of us don't say, I love you. We're not kissing them. We're not hugging them. We're not being affectionate because that's not our cultural norm. That's not how we were raised. But when they know that you love them, they will trust you, even if you tell them things they don't want to hear. But they need to know that you love them, and then there's that bond. And you can say things like, guess what? You're not going to that party because it's not safe, and I love you too much for you to be in danger. I want you to be successful in school so that you will have a better life than me because I love you, because I care about you. I love you even though you broke the law. You still have to go to jail, but I'm telling you, I still love you, and I will take care of you and visit you. Make sure that they know you love them. And sometimes our actions speak louder than words, but what if there are no words? Because sometimes we don't say it. So in Chinese, this is one phrase, 你是我, I'm terrible at Chinese, 你是我心爱的. You are the love of my heart. I love you. You are my beloved. Say I love you. This is what I do. I say, I love you every day. Good morning. I love you. Hello. I love you. Good night. I love you. I try and kiss them good night. Now that they're older, I can't really do that. So I ask them to kiss me sometimes. I say it until they're tired of hearing it. Why? Because I want them to hear it so much that they're sick of me saying it. I want them to say, Baba, okay, I know you love me. You don't have to say it every day. You don't have to say it every 5 minutes. I know you love me. And one of my fears is if my child ever got into a desperate moment. Desperation is when your brain starts to short circuit. And I want them to know that if they're ever in trouble, that their mom and dad love them. And maybe that's going to save them from doing something stupid, like hurting themselves. So I'm okay saying it over and over again, because I'm hoping that that message is going to be so deep and so firm and so sticky that it's going to help them out if they're ever in trouble. I'm going to emphasize this other word. I love you even when you fail. The message I'm trying to give is there's nothing that will end my love for you because you are my beloved child. Even. So with my kids, I feel like it's not enough to say, I love you. I have to say, I love you even when you make big mistakes, even when you have bad grades, even when you don't go to college or don't go to the college I want you to go to. Even if you break the law, I will still love you. If you date somebody or marry somebody I don't like, I will love you. If you get pregnant or get somebody else pregnant, I will love you. If you tell me you're gay or transgender or something else that makes me uncomfortable, I will still love you. If you get divorced, if you lose your job, if you get fired, if you do something that embarrasses the family honor, I will still love you because of who you are. That is huge for them. And actually, the reason I went in this direction was because I kept saying, I love you. And I noticed that with my older son, Eric, he was wondering, like, yeah, you say you love me, but do you love me if I do this or I do that? And so we had these conversations so that he can feel assured that mom and dad love him. So one of my kids says, hey, Baba, I failed my test. And my response, and he's waiting and he's wondering if he's going to get yelled at. And I said, hey, guess what? I love you. Okay, I love you. You are my beloved. I don't say it always. Sometimes he says, hey, Baba, I sort of crashed the car. Are you okay? Yeah, I'm okay. Anybody get hurt? Oh, okay, good. Well, I really love you. We're going to have to get the car fixed. You might need to help pay for it and stuff, but I do love you. So what do you want for lunch? Okay, I'm not saying I'm perfect. Sometimes I lose my cool, but keeping away from all that drama helps them stay out of the fight, flight, or freeze mode, survival mode. Say I love you because you're my son and daughter. I love you more than your achievements. I love you for who you are, not what you do. Don't be afraid of failure. Just try your best. You sort of have to tell them explicitly this. Even if you say, I love you, you have to connect the dots. I love you more than your achievements. I love you for who you are, not what you do. It makes sense to us as adults, but when you're 15 years old or 18 years old, some teenagers can't really process this information unless you lay it out for them. This is how my mother said it to me. My mother came from China. She was raised in China. Very old school. A lot of the stuff I'm talking to you now is really modern. But this is how she told me. This is my mom and dad up here at my graduation from UCLA. And this is me as a younger man and my two sisters. And so I did very, very well at UC San Diego. Really, really well. And some of it was sort of magical. Like, people would say, Andy, how did you get an A on that test? I didn't even know what was going to be on the test. And there was something that helped. It was a gift. I don't claim any credit for it. Somehow I knew what the professor was going to test on most of the time. I just could sort of listen to them and figure it out and be ready to go. And then I would get A's. Well, when I got to medical school, that magic superpower went away because I didn't know what they were talking about. And I really struggled. I was getting C's on exams for the first time in my entire life. My self-esteem took a huge dive. I was really getting desperate. I was sad. I wasn't sleeping. I was in the fight, flight, or freeze mode. And when I went back for my first winter break, like in December, and I was the grumpy, sullen, mopey guy, and my family knew something was wrong. And they said, hey, what's going on? So we had this big family, hangout time after dinner. And they're like, tell us about medical school and how are you doing? And we're so excited for you. And I was like, I am not doing well. Oh, you always say that. You do great. I go, no, I am not doing well. And well, if you're not doing well, just try your best. Just try 100, just try a little more. And I'm sure you'll be fine. And what they didn't understand was I was already giving my maximum and it was not working. And so I started crying. I really got choked up. I said, you don't understand. I'm not doing well. I don't know what's going on. I'm getting bad grades. And then it hit them like, oh, he's serious. And my mother said, maybe you shouldn't go back. And she said it quietly and lovingly. Maybe you should not go back. And in her way, she was saying, I love you more than medical school. I love you even though my friends are going to say, what? Andy failed medical school? Andy quit medical school? They were so proud of him, the first American-born kid going to be a doctor. And now Mrs. Wen is saying he failed medical school. Well, she wasn't thinking about that. She was thinking about me and my personal health. And she said, maybe you should not go back. That was my mom's way of saying, I love you so much. even if you fail medical school, I love you more than you being a doctor. And my response as a kid, I was only 22. I said, what? I didn't say I was going to quit. I'm not quitting. But somehow that message that mom said, maybe you should not go back, actually really made me feel much better. And I still struggled in my first year. I started getting better grades. I just didn't understand what medical school was about. And ultimately I did fine. But that message really helped me through a bad time. Maybe you should not go back because I love you. So create safety around them. Don't yell at them. Don't make them feel stupid. Make it safe. Give them an opportunity to ask why. Give them an opportunity to take risks. Give them an opportunity to disagree. Healthy communication means don't lecture all the time. Don't tell them what to do all the time. Don't nag them. Talk with them and not at them. Pretend, yeah, this is actually something our friends Alan and Lorna, they had 4 adult kids, and they said, pretend you don't always know the answer. Pretend you don't know. Listen and ask, and they will start talking more. If you're doing all the talking the way I'm talking now, they're not going to talk. They're not going to share. And when they ask you for advice, they're more likely to listen. If you go and said, hey, I need to tell you something, they're like, oh, here it comes again. Baba's got all these things to tell me all the time. I'm stressed out. But if they say, hey, Dad, I'm sort of wondering what I should do about my teacher, or how should I handle my friends who are doing this and I don't want to do that. If you give them advice and they've asked for your advice, that's powerful. Guide them gently and gradually. Slow and steady wins the race. Henry said it. What we think is successful is they may not be successful until 35 or 40 or 50. But what we want is a long-term journey that gets them to success. Guide them gently and gradually. Pretend you don't have all the answers. Sometimes you need to say, you know what? I don't know. What do you think? Even though we know what they should do. How do you feel about that? Hey, and even if we make suggestions, we can make it softly. Instead of saying, you need to do this, you need to do that. We can say, hey, you know, I was sort of wondering that maybe you could give this a try. And as they get older, that's what they want. They don't want to be bossed around. And then here's another thing I learned lately is, hey, do you want to know what I think? You know, you're telling me about your problem. Would you like to know what I think? Now, if they don't want to know what they think, they'll go, no, I just need to talk to somebody. I need you to listen, Dad. Then they don't want to hear what you think. And if you tell them what you think, you're going to stress them out. But if you say, would you like to know what I think? And you're willing, you showed that you're willing to walk away. If they say, no, I don't want to hear it. But if they say, yeah, I do want to hear it, well, they're going to listen really, really well to your advice. And then sometimes it's better to say, you know what, that's an interesting problem. I'm wondering how you're going to solve it. Meaning, I'm not here to solve all your problems, because when you're not living with me, you need to solve your problems yourself. So drop the pressure at home. They're under a ton of pressure from all these things that we talked about. And who is their worst source of pressure? Who gets mad at them? Who is disappointed in them? Who yells at them? Who hits them? It's mostly at home, actually, for most of our kids. Some kids growing up in a rough neighborhood, their stress is the neighborhood and their safe places at home. But in some of our culture, the stress comes from home more than any place else. And the reality is, even if you drop the pressure to 0, the teenagers are extremely stressed out by school and peers. Even if you said, hey, I believe in you, don't worry about it, just do the best you can. Well, at school, their peers are saying, hey, what grade did you get? How many AP classes are you taking? I'm taking 6. How many are you taking? Hey, what's your SAT or ACT score back when we were doing those? What college are you going to? I'm getting early admission to blah, blah, blah college. How about you? That's a lot of pressure. Don't overschedule them. Give them a chance to relax and sleep and laugh and play so that they can recharge. Lowering the pressure, I'm horrible at this for myself. I don't sleep enough. For some families and some kids, prayer and meditation and quiet time are really important. Laughter and playing, we let them do it when they were little, but somehow they're 16 and they're applying, you know, they're in high school and we're like, hey, this is serious. stop goofing around. Well, it turns out laughing and playing is very recharging. Exercise, walking, running, helping them to decompress some of their stress, and talking with friends and family can be very helpful. Remember that your goal is for them to become adults who can handle complex data and make healthy choices, adults who can balance risks and benefits, adults who can take responsibility for their actions and choices instead of blaming other people all the time. Okay, let them make mistakes. It turns out people learn from their mistakes. Sometimes we learn better, either your mistake or somebody else's mistake. And it's better to make mistakes when they're young, and it's because the consequences are different. And it teaches them how to take risks. So when they were little kids learning to walk, they fell down. And then eventually they got their balance right and they became more confident, and it builds resilience, the ability to bounce back after failure or bounce back after falling down. It encourages them to have to try. Even if they fail, they're going to try again and keep going. That's what some people call grit. Being positive is huge. Negativity sticks. And I'll give you a specific example. This is my teenager when she was little. And she's the one that I talked about in the beginning. And I said, actually, her siblings were teasing her too. They said, Baba never yelled at you. Mom never yelled at you. You got away with everything. You're the baby of the family. And I said, you're right, Katie, I don't think I've ever yelled at you. And she thought about it. She goes, you did yell at me. I remember. You were talking to Emily, and I wanted to talk to you, and I kept trying to talk to you. Well, what was happening was the baby of the family wanted all this attention, and I was trying to give some attention to Emily, the middle child, number 3, and I was talking to her. I go, oh, how was your day? And Katie kept jumping in like, hey, Baba, guess what? And I said, Katie, I'm talking to your sister. Yeah, but I want to tell you, Katie, I'm talking to your sister. Katie, this is Emily's time. And I finally said, Katie, knock it off. I'll talk with you in a minute. This is Emily's time. This is Jeje's time. Well, she remembers that really clearly. She says, I completely remember you were mad at me. She was 4 years old. She's turning 16. 12 years later, she still remembers that. Negativity sticks. And it can be, if they hear negativity over and over again, it changes your relationship and it changes their self-esteem. So here's something about being positive. My friend Jorge gave me this tip. He learned it as a baseball coach. There's something called the Positive Coaching Alliance for coaches, because coaches were notorious for yelling at their team members to say, you didn't score that goal. You weren't looking, you weren't paying attention. So they said, here's an easy way to do it. Say 3 positive things before you make a suggestion. Instead of yelling at them, say 3 positive things before you make a suggestion. I go, well, Jorge, what does that mean? He goes, well, what that means is, let's say the kid he misses the baseball that was coming right at him. Okay. And he goes, the usual way was, oh, what's wrong with you? You're horrible. You're terrible. You're not going to play anymore. And the kid feels horrible. Well, clearly some kids might get better, but many kids just quit. They don't play baseball anymore because it's no fun. Well, the Coaching Alliance said, say 3 positive things before you make a suggestion. So Jorge said, what you do is you say, hey, you know what, Andy, I really like how you held your mitt up and you had your mitt ready to catch the ball. And then I really liked how you sort of crouched down and had your body in a good position so you can get the ball. And I really like how you were watching the ball come to you. You were really concentrating. And then little Andy, baseball player, says, oh, okay, thanks. Okay, coach. And then just almost as a side comment, the coach says, all I need you to do, if you want to do a little bit better, maybe next time, don't close your eyes. Okay, just don't close your eyes. You did everything great. You had your mitt ready. You had your body ready. You were tracking the ball. Just don't blink right when the ball is about to come to you. And then the little boy says, okay, thanks. Okay. And guess what? Next time they'll probably do a little bit better. If the coach is yelling at them all the time, they go into fight, flight, or freeze. That ball's coming to them and they're thinking, I don't want to get yelled at. Their concentration breaks and they drop the ball. So praise who they are and what they do. Praise efforts more than results. I know this is counter to what other teachers are talking about. They say, you know what, great effort. I don't care if you tried hard, but you failed. and the business project failed. We all have expectations at work, and we need to meet those expectations, but I want to encourage you to praise their efforts more than the results. This is John Wooden. He was the coach at UCLA. He is the most successful college coach ever. He won 10 national basketball championships in 12 years. And if you can go on Amazon, you can Google him. There's people who have written down some of his lessons, and they're very simple. One of them is, as long as you do your best, you are never a failure. As long as you do your best, you are never a failure. He told his basketball teams, I just want you to do your best. Practice, train well, pass the ball to each other, work well as a team. And even if we lose, we can hold our heads up because we did our best. Now, what he also said was he was disappointed in some teams that were just naturally talented and they didn't really try. One of his most successful teams, he said, that was actually that was a frustrating year for me because they were so talented that they didn't care as much. And actually, some of my weaker teams worked really hard to reach their potential, and I was more proud of them than the more successful team. So as long as you do your best, you're never a failure. This guy who said something so simplistic about praising effort rather than results, look at all these trophies he won for UCLA. 10 national championships in 12 years, a record that hasn't been beaten yet. The world is dark and the pressure is high. And I'm encouraging you to use love, acceptance, and encouragement to help your team succeed. You can be positive without spoiling them. One of the things that I had to get over for my own personality was, I don't want to be too nice to them. I don't want to take it easy on them because then they're going to be spoiled and weak. Well, it turns out there's a lot of data, both in the work world and in the school world, that when we create a safe space, more people will be successful. Some people love pressure, many people do not. Be affectionate, hug them, kiss them, play with them, laugh with them. Just because they're 16 doesn't mean they don't like to play and laugh. Say, I love you, be sweet, be nice, be kind, be patient. Spend time with them. Do things that they like to do. Movies, music, food, shopping, boba tea. Sometimes you have to pretend what they like. Some of my kids are like, hey, Baba, check out this song, or can we watch this movie together? I think you'll really like it. Well, if I say, that's the stupidest song I've ever heard, I hate that song. That's terrible music. Do you think they're going to reach out to me and say, hey, Baba, do you want to hear this song I like? They're going to say, he didn't like that other song. I felt bad because he criticized me in my music. I'm not going to him again. Okay, so sometimes I have to pretend to like what they like to build relationships. Sometimes taking a walk, hey, we're taking a walk, sometimes blatant bribery like boba tea. Hey, you want to go out, spend time together? And if you haven't done this and you're feeling like, it's too late, my kid's already 17, I can't build that relationship. It's never too late to start. You can reach out to them, you can try. And the reality is, if you don't have this kind of relationship with them now and you don't start trying, in 10 years, it's going to be even worse. So just start trying and you'll be surprised. Love and affection and boba tea and doing what they like to do go a long way. That's human nature. This is how I did it. So my girls said, hey, Baba, we'd like to go to a concert. And so before the pandemic, we went to 3 concerts. One was Katie and Emily wanted to see a YouTube group called Us the Duo. And I said, oh, this is different. I never did this with the boys, but okay. And then I said, can I go with you? And they go, well, actually, we just want you to drive. We don't actually want you there. And so I had to be a little strategic. I said, okay, here's the deal. How much are the tickets? They said $25. I go, if you go by yourself and I don't get to join you, I'm happy to drive you. I don't want you going, taking a bus or, being in an unsafe area. I'll drive you and pick you up. But if you go without me, you're paying for it yourself. If you let me go with you, I'll pay for your ticket. And guess what? They let me go with them. And then Katie wanted to see another YouTuber named Grace Vanderwall. And I did the same thing. And she goes, I'd rather go with my friends, Baba. No offense, I'd rather go with my friends. I said, okay, if you can't get a friend to go and you let me go with you, I'll pay for it. Well, it turned out her friends were busy, and I got to hang out with Katie and all these screaming teenagers listening to a really talented young lady sing. And then it's important, this is sort of other types of parenting, enjoying it while it lasts. Our kids grow up fast. Henry, you have kids in your 30s, grab onto it, build those relationships now, not just for their success, but for your success in relationships, and so that you have a lasting thing. This is a father, Eric, came to me and said, hey, Baba, can you believe this guy? So this is a TikTok video. I don't really go on TikTok, so he had to show me TikTok. And this guy is putting on a video of himself. He's basically crying while he's driving. And he's telling this story that he promised his daughter he would buy her a used car for college. Well, he purposely picked a car that was 10 hours away. And he said to his daughter, hey, we're going to go pick up the car. Let's go check it out. You have to come with me to see if you like it. And while she's asleep in the car, he says to the camera, while he's crying, he said, my daughter is about to leave for college, and I purposely found a car that was 10 hours away so that I can spend the day with her. That's all it was. He could have found a closer car, but he wanted to build his relationship with his daughter. And so I did a similar thing with my daughter, Emily. She came home from college, and I said, hey, I'll go to that concert with you. I ended up driving like 300 miles or maybe 200 miles to pick her up, go to the concert in San Francisco, drive her back to UC Davis, and then drive home. I didn't get home until like 2 or 3 in the morning, just so I could spend time with her, listen to how she's doing, let her tell me about college, and let her talk. And then if she wanted my advice, I gave her a little advice. I said, do you want advice about this? She goes, no, I just needed to let you know. And I said, okay, I'll shut up. Okay, final slides. Thank you for hanging in there. Self-care and self-compassion. You guys are special and you're loved. You need to know that so that you can love them better. When we get on an airplane and we have little kids, they said if the oxygen falls down because our plane is in trouble, put the mask on yourself so that you can, before you put it on small children or other people. Why? Because if you don't have oxygen, you're going to pass out and you won't be able to help anybody. You guys as parents, especially in Silicon Valley, huge pressure, huge stress. So please take great care of yourselves and be compassionate and nice to yourself. Seek help yourself so that you can love them better. You can't help people if your tank is empty. So parenting for success, the power of love, acceptance, and encouragement. Thank you everyone for hanging in there. I have a couple slides about kids that are struggling with some of this stuff, and we can go into that mode if you want, but I wanted to open it up for questions. And then if people are interested, I can talk about what to do about the teenagers that are not very motivated. Okay.
Andy, we have several questions. Let me read some of them off to you.
Okay.
One of them was, my kids often said that I'm judging them. Mm-hmm. Do you have advice to change this situation? Because I don't want that to happen.
Right. Well, I think some of it is that strategy of saying, if I'm judging them and nagging them and criticizing them over and over again, if it's not working, then whatever I'm doing is not working. And we don't, as adults, don't like to be judged and criticized and nagged. And so what I had to do was, this is where leadership and a little bit of parental manipulation and strategic language can come in handy. And there's actually let me share my slide again. I have a slide on, Henry, would you mind reading me the questions? Because maybe I should just share those slides that I was holding back on.
Sure, I can read the questions. While you're looking for that, there's another one it's a little longer. Let me read it. And that says, I'm from Korea, where competition seems to be much higher than here. I'm not an immigrant though, But I'm suddenly wondering what life effects in a long run would be brought by experience and exposure to extreme competition in teens. Exposure of extreme competition could change one's personality and one's ability of compassion. I'm asking that question because I think those who have been exposed to extreme competition environments since young ages would have formed the norm of competition perfectionism for life.
Yes, yes. And that's a great question, because like I was trying to talk about pressure and perfectionism, some people thrive. The people who win Olympic medals, I mentioned the play Hamilton. That guy spent years writing a musical that talks about the life of Alexander Hamilton. He said he spent 7 or 8 years perfecting it. That is drive and perfectionism. And you do get, some people love it. Some people, if you hold them back, they get depressed because they want pressure. They want challenge. So this idea of being too easy on people makes them crazy. We just need to be aware that not everybody comes out of it better. Some people come out of it worse. And remember, this talk is leaning a certain way because it was motivated when I was seeing and hearing about teenagers commit suicide. So,
I'd like to share something along this lines. So once again, I have 2 girls, and they're both in their 30s now. And the thing that is interesting is my younger daughter was less academic than my older daughter, and she just doesn't take tests, and she's not that type of an academic learner. And when she was a sophomore at Monte Vista, something came up and she was very frustrated, and she said, "I know you and Mom think I'm dumb."
Wow.
Full stop, right? And then I said, I'm actually a pretty hard-ass guy at work. I'm like Andy. I push real hard, And I said, but I would hire you in a blink, because I know you actually have the right thing. This is just academics. And school isn't the goal. The goal is going out. Now, she's doing extremely well. She might be looking to buy her second house, and, this is, people, what you said about success and your picture of success and happiness and everything. Boy, I tell you, they didn't give us the owner manual, and you get it wrong. And, so you just have to be attuned to it. I just wanted to share that because, you think of things and you think about the pressure. Someone else wrote about the pressure and stuff and how our schools are so pressured. We did a survey at the Fremont Union High School District. I'm part of the Emotional Wellness Task Force. We did a survey of all of the students, right? About 100 families didn't participate, but 10,000 did.
Wow.
And do you know what the number one source of pressure is by the time they get to high school? Self-induced pressure. You know what the number 2 is? Peer pressure. So families are like a distant number 3. Right. So anyway.
Yeah. And I think that's incredible. Boy, 10,000 respondents. That's huge. Statistically, that's extremely powerful. What other questions are up there, Henry? And then I can maybe. Well,
did you want to get back to this thing about the advice about judgment and the fear that the parent is judging the children too much?
Yeah,
at least that's the kid's impression.
Yeah, I think, and remember, you might be doing a perfectly great job, and you as a parent, but what they receive is different, because remember, they're in a stressful change. They're going through hormonal changes. They're going from girls to young women and boys to young men. There's body changes, there's shaving, there's curves and things, they're learning to wear a bra and learning, do they look pretty enough? Do they look handsome enough? Were they rejected by their, there's pressures that we don't even know about. And that might mean that even when we say, hey, shoot, you could say it nicely, like, oh, I'm sorry, I'm disappointed that you didn't blah, blah, blah. You didn't yell at them, but they because they're in this high stress situation, they may take even gentle words as being very challenging, very critical. So it's possible that you're not being that critical. And that's why when I realized that component, that there's a lot of things that I might be saying that might be reasonable to an adult, but to my stressed out kid, they may be oversensitive. And that's why I'm using language that's way on the other side, overcompensating for that sensitivity. Like, hey, do you want to know what I think? Or are you telling me, you're struggling in school, and do you want to hear what I think? Or, being ultra gentle. And I can tell you, in our work environments, I as a department head have a bunch of physicians who are ultra perfectionistic, and they've been straight A students since preschool. And when things are not going well, even if they go from an A+ to an A or an A-, they feel very sensitive and defensive and maybe lose their tempers. And I'm like, hey, you're doing a great job. And, maybe like when we got a feedback that, this didn't go well when you talked to one of your colleagues because you guys got in a hard conversation, an argument, right? I go, maybe let's try this or try that. I think it's great that most of the time you as a colleague, you're doing a great job, great job, great job. Just like that, say 3 nice things before you make a suggestion. Maybe next time try this, or maybe I can get you some support in that area. Sometimes that can be really helpful. Now, sometimes I say to my kids, even this week, it's summer, so some of them are hanging around at home. I say to them, you need to clean up after yourself. Like, you're a young adult. It's not my job and mom's job to clean up after you. Like, I'm not creating this thing where I don't want them being, bad teammates, bad roommates, or bad citizens. But I'm not yelling at them, at least not yet. But, so I think it takes, and it depends on how your kid is wired. Some kids need direct, concrete guidance, and some people who are very sensitive need just very gentle nudging, and they get it because they're so sensitive. So let me, Henry, should I go on to the last few slides about what if our kids are being lazy and making bad choices?
Well, actually, that's relating to there are 2 questions that are out there still. Mm-hmm. And I'd like to see it because they actually are both related to boys. You've had 2 sons. Mm-hmm. One of them is, my boy loves to play computer games, sometimes is addicted to it. Mm-hmm. Hope you have time to address this issue. And I'm going to go ahead and read the next one. Please talk about motivation, Dr. Wen, especially if I find boys losing motivation in high school and college and not using their potential. So, you've got one, which is distraction of games. And I think this question comes up every year we've had it, has it, right?
Right.
On computer games. And then the other thing is just general motivation.
Right. Well, one of the things I did is I actually there's some family pictures in this slide deck, but Henry knows I usually have way more pictures. So out of respect for my kids, I got rid of some of the pictures. I have a lot of pictures on my Facebook page, actually, so I'm going to tell a personal story. I'm pretty sure my son Eric won't mind, and about motivation and about trying to let you know that I've had to learn to do some of this stuff. So Eric is our eldest, and very bright, very talented. And when he went to UC Davis, he was pre-med and doing extremely well. He was getting into competitive internships. He was doing all the right things to go to medical school. Well, his junior year, he came home and he said, "Baba, I need to talk to you." And I'm like, uh-oh, okay, sure, let's talk. And he gave me this heart-to-heart talk about why he did not want to be a doctor. And I was like, okay. And he was very emotional about it because this was like a big turning point for him. And I said, I didn't tell you had to be a doctor, right? And he goes, yeah, but I thought you expected it and I'm good at it. I just don't care for it that much. Like, why would I spend, you spent like, you didn't even graduate until you were 32 years old from your fellowship. Why would I spend the best years of my life studying for something that just because I'm good doesn't mean I actually like it or care about it? I go, well, the worst thing you want in any field is somebody who doesn't want to do what they're doing. So the worst doctor is the doctor who does not want to be a doctor because they're cranky and they make mistakes and they don't care. You want somebody who's passionate. So what are you going to do? Well, it turns out he always had a passion for videos. He used to, in middle school, spend days and weeks working on, you know, a Lego stop motion video. And he used to make videos with his friends. And he goes, I want to be a videographer. I was like, okay, I don't really know what that means, but let's figure that out. So he was somebody who was headed towards science. And he said, I want to be a creative person. So his great passion and joy is actually, turns out he likes helping people. He has a YouTube page called Eric Wen Productions, and he's making videos about and helping other people with their videos and helping them do things. That brings him joy. And you know what? He works harder at doing what he's doing than I did in medical school. He spends, you know, he doesn't sleep making some of these videos, and he does wedding videos and corporate videos. He's paying his own way. And I'm like, okay, that's your path. And I actually like, so one of the problems about motivating him was I had to release him, like Henry said, releasing his daughter to say, you need to be on your own journey. And it's not my life, it's your life. There's responsibility with that freedom, the way I told Katie, but you make your own choices. And you're going to have to figure out how to pay your own way and you know, figure out what you want. And he's constantly, if you watch his videos, he's like basically working it out in his head on these videos. Another son, Sam, he went from high school to Cal Poly Pomona, where he did extremely well. There's Cal Poly San Luis Obispo and Cal Poly Pomona. And he said, I really want to be a nurse. I don't want to be a doctor because doctors are sort of full of themselves. And I really like serving people. I really love serving people. So I said, okay, be a nurse. That sounds awesome. And then, you know, he recently transferred to UC Davis, and it's been a new challenge for him. And he's had some academic, you know, times where, because, you know, when you change schools, it can be very frustrating because the game changes. The schools expect different things. So he's gotten frustrated. And I've had to do what I shared with you guys. Hey, I know you're trying hard. I know you're doing a great job. Don't worry about what I think. Just figure out what you want and, you know, go to your potential that God gave you and don't worry about it, you know. And so every kid, you know, like Henry was saying, has a different journey. And, you know, I think we have to be careful that we're not trying to make them something that they're not naturally wired to be. All of you guys in tech and finance are high achieving people. Very high achieving people. That bell-shaped curve, you guys are at the top of the bell-shaped curve for drive and talent. Otherwise, you wouldn't be living in the Bay Area. Well, it turns out that not everybody is wired that way. And we need to figure out how we can support them so that they can be successful to the way they were created to be successful. And it's different. Just like I didn't tell my sons to be doctors. One is a creative person and one is wants to be a nurse. And, you know, there was a time where being a male nurse was looked down upon. And I'm like, that sounds awesome, Sam. Go for it. You like helping people and it's a good career, and go for it. Henry, let me, I'm going to share my slides again, and it gets a little bit more into what if they are being lazy and making bad choices. Okay, can you guys see my slides? It's a cartoon. So this is what I see during the summer, and actually a lot of times, especially since their schedules are sort of weird with distance learning. So the mom is holding up her watch saying, basically, what time is it? Are you getting up? And the teenager says, I am up. I'm not up yet. So many of our teenagers are like this. Some of them are early risers, but many of them like to sleep in, and that's actually biologically driven. Remember, they're going through all this brain and body growth. It's an exhausting process. But here's a simplistic grid, and you know, we could spend 2 hours just on this topic. But if their attitude and behavior, these are attitudes and behaviors on the left side, and then parental response. So my presentation, what I would suggest to you is, if somebody is not motivated and they're making bad choices, they actually need to understand that there's consequences to some of their choices. I'm not talking about hitting or yelling. I'm just saying there's consequences. If they don't do well in school, then there's consequences about further education and jobs and opportunities. I still think that they need support and encouragement and positive guidance and coaching, but they need to learn about consequences and responsibility. For the motivated, stressed out kids, it's what this talk was about, was we need to reward them and encourage them with love and, you know, just helping them. But at the same time, it's really about support, love, and encouragement, positive guidance and coaching. Positive guidance and coaching apply to both. There's also a recognition that as our kids get older, we are less in control of their response. When they're 5 years old and we tell them to go to their room, if they don't clean, you know, they're in trouble if they don't clean up their mess. Well, we have a lot of power. But when they're 16 years old and 19 years old and 22 years old, our power shrinks. But here's some things to remember. You are the parent and you set the rules. You can be loving, you can be patient, and you can be kind, but that does not mean you let them push you around. So you're paying the bills. If you have a kid who's drinking and driving, why are they driving? It's your car, it's your insurance, you're paying for the gas, you own the keys. That's an extreme example, but you actually have a lot of control. You can be friendly and supportive with them up to a certain point, but you still set the rules because you are the parents. They want parents. They actually don't want a pal. They have plenty of friends. They want a parent who can guide them. I'm just saying, don't be such a pushy parent, but you still have responsibilities as being the parents. You can be loving without pushing them around. Teens and children need the parents to set healthy boundaries. They need, and remember, they're trying to test the boundaries. They're trying to say, how far can I get away with this? And to be successful, they need to understand the values behind the rules. And some will say, okay, I get it. I need to work hard to get that goal. You know, like my son, who's a videographer, he is working really, really hard. And he's decided it's worth it to me. But if they're being lazy or making bad choices, it's important for you guys to not spoil them. Healthy and happy adults, remember, that's our goal for them. Don't force them into being something that they're not. Make sure that they know you love them. Explain to them why their choices are bad. Don't nag them, because nagging is not going to help. It's just going to make everybody frustrated. And then ultimately, you need to give them appropriate consequences. If they're on Wi-Fi playing video games, where is their access to the Wi-Fi coming from? You're paying for the Wi-Fi. You could turn it off. Remove distractions, money, internet, other, you know, hanging out with friends that are drinking and taking drugs. When they get mad, let them know that you love them enough to take action, okay? Healthy action, talking with them, having difficult conversations, but not getting into fight mode yourself. Encourage even the smallest improvements. There's an article, I couldn't get the article, but it's a free article out of the New York Times. It's this old article. There was a writer who went to like SeaWorld and said, what Shamu, the killer whale, taught me about love and life and marriage. And it's an easy read. She wrote a book about it. But basically the message is this. As a reporter, she was sent to SeaWorld to see how they teach whales to jump through these hoops and jump over fire. And what she found was what they do is they reward everything that the whale is doing right. And so if the whale goes toward the hoop but doesn't jump through it, they give the whale some fish. And they go, hey, great job, great job, great job. And then when the whale jumps, they give more fish. And then when the whale jumps through the hoop, they give more fish. So it's all this positive affirmation. She gave an example of how they trained a dog to ride a skateboard. Well, a dog does not naturally want to ride a skateboard, but they said they give the dog a treat when the dog started getting close to the skateboard. And then they gave another treat when the dog put his paw on the skateboard. And then eventually when the dog was standing on the skateboard, they gave the dog a lot of treats. And eventually the dog pushed himself like he was riding a skateboard, and they gave him treats. They just positive reinforcement for micro successes. And it turns out, then she said, then I went home and I said, I'm going to try this on my husband because he's a slob. He never puts the dishes away. He doesn't put the laundry away. So one time her husband put some socks into the hamper, and she said, oh, honey, I love it when you do that. That's so nice. Well, she kept doing these micro rewards, and eventually he was cleaning up after himself. It took a long time because it's behavior modification. And so I think that's being strategic and figuring out, sometimes you use a hard thing, like you shut off the Wi-Fi, shut off the electricity. The classic story in some families is they take off the doors because the kid is doing weird stuff in the room behind closed doors. Sometimes you take an aggressive approach. And if you look at this article, What Shamu Taught Me About Life and Love and Marriage, it's often behavior modification that comes with a lot of positive reinforcement. It can take a while, and some of it is they need to mature into it. These are very simple. Like, we could talk about this for 2 hours going deeper, but these are some simplistic things that you guys can think about.
You know, let me weigh in on the computer games thing a little bit, because I know this is a big problem. And, you know, I think, as you were saying, that you have a control of a certain thing, but also you have to ask yourself, okay, when do you allow them to do things?
Right.
One of our panelists back in July on the graduate panel, he was one of those computer games kids. You know, he did a lot of stuff. In fact, he is now a professional competitor in some game thing. I mean, it's really funny. You know, he's 26 years old and he's still doing this, but he's nationally ranked. Wow. But his day job is he works at LinkedIn. And, you know, the whole thing is that he managed to figure out, through a lot of support from his parents, how to actually also learn to do a regular day job, you know. And it was really funny because his mother was working on a project recently, and I was listening in on this, and he is coaching his mother on best business practices on this stuff. Right. And you go like, oh my Lord, the guy that just, you know, was constantly doing the game stuff and everything. Because you have to realize that, you know, they do need to do this as to do other things. We've determined mathematically that 80% of the students are not in the top 20%, you know. And you know, and yet a lot of them are going to do really, really well.
Right.
But you have to allow them a certain amount of things. And I think your whole message about responsibility is kind of the key thing.
Right. And here's a family story about gaming. So I was brought up before video games, you know. My kids say, was there like television and was there electricity? Was it black and white? And, you know, actually when I was little, it was black and white, and then it became color. But it turned out that in the old country and in a generation ago, before digital things happened, people got together by hanging out and face to face, or even actually talking on the telephone instead of texting on the phone. And what I noticed with my kids is they weren't talking and they weren't hanging out. They were doing it through video games. It was a new way for them to work together and build teams and socialize. And actually, like last year, my son Eric and Sam they have two cousins who actually both went to Limerick, and one was living in Tennessee and one was living in Sacramento. And what they were doing was they found a simple video game that they liked, and they set a time where they would get together for an hour or two, and they would talk and play and have a great time, just like when they were 8 years old, but it was over a video game. So what we consider bad, sometimes that's just the new way that people socialize.
Yeah, well, I think it's probably a good time. People are starting to leave. So I think we need to, first of all, thank you very much, Dr. Wen. I mean, once again, this is always inspiring, and I'm sure a lot of people have a lot they've gotten out of this talk. I want to remind people that the recording will be made available, and it's at, Rick, do you have a slide you could show with that address? It's bit.ly. See if he got it. Yeah, there you go. So at bit.ly/Coop Chamber TV, you'll be able to see this presentation. Also, there are the presentations from some of the other events that the Chamber's hosted. So you might want to take a look at it. I actually encourage everybody to take a look at the graduate panel that we did a month ago. Anyway, once again, Andy, thank you very much. I really wish we were all there together because it's wonderful seeing you in the room, and also give your regards to your wife for us, okay?
Thank you. Thank you for this opportunity, Henry and Rick. Thank you for all your support.
Yes, and thank all the audience for attending, and please spread the word. Thank you very much.